and welcome to English to Share with Susan. Today I want to talk about Wallace Stevens' famous poem, Sun and Morning. In this poem, Wallace Stevens talks about his modernist ideas. He represents them, he experiments with the topics of modernism. Let us move on to a brief introduction to Wallace Stevens. Wallace Stevens is like the English Romantics, so imagination for him is a key term. And he thinks that the task of the poet is via his imagination to find their life into the solid things like a rock. So he has a close contact with nature, and he thinks that the time of Bible and religious poetry is up, and it's time for poetry of the earth. The modernist trend at the time is the death of God, and every modernist poet maybe is replying to this question: and what should we do when there is no God? And Wallace Stevens' answer is to lend a new metaphor to God, to find God on earth, to see forms of divinity which are familiar to mankind. So for him, it's a time to change the subject matter. If the time has changed, change the subject matter as well. Concerning the form of the poem, the structure, Wallace Stevens experiments with different poetry formats, and he sometimes relies on the conventional forms of poetry like this one. This poem, The Sunny Morning, has 8 stanzas, and each stanza has 16 lines, so everything is just so clarified for your audience. Uh, and Paul Stevens himself was a lawyer, so poetry for him was not a professional task. However, he thought that the task of the poet is to use the imagination, and then even go as far as to use the science of illusions, and based on the imagination, which is important to him. And therefore, he thought that poetry is something for pleasure. And he said that writing a poem is like going into a cafe, that you go for the sake of the pleasure. Then something is just devoured in there. You learn different things. You listen to different accents, different terminologies, different words of the people. So it's a public place for Will Stevens anyway. And Will Stevens is a happy poet. A happy poet in the sense that he writes fun poetry, or his poetry is comic, but in the sense that in his poetry, the world is a meaningful place. So unlike many of his modernist peers, in his world of poetry, there is nothing, chaotic. His world is a meaningful place to dwell on. And let us move on to the Sunday morning. Sunday is an important day for Christians because they go, formally at least, they went to church on Sundays. So people go to church generally on Sundays. And this Sunday, based on the implications present in the poem, is not an ordinary Sunday, it's the Easter. So if it is Easter, a very specific Sunday, the people definitely go to church, even if you don't go to church on a regular basis. For the sake of the Easter and the celebration of the day, and it's the day of the rising of Jesus Christ, you go to the church. But this poem is about not going to church on Easter. So this poem is about a woman who refuses to go to church on Easter, and the poem has two speakers actually. The first speaker, the one who speaks most of the times in the poem, is a man, most probably the poet, the persona, and then we have the feminine voice of the woman and her doubts and her imagination. So let's just move on. And this is the first stanza of the poem, and the very word of the poem is complacency. So the poem starts with pleasure. Complacencies of the peignoir in late coffee and oranges in a sunny chair. The woman has refused to go to the church, so she's enjoying the complacencies of the day. She's in her light dressing gown, so and she feels light as well. Coffee and oranges, and a sunny chair, and the green freedom of a cockatoo upon a rock mingled to dissipate the holy hush of ancient sacrifice. So, instead of engaging herself with the ancient sacrifice, the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, and then consequently his rising up to the heaven, she's enjoying the earthly pleasures, the cockatoo, the oranges, the coffee, and the peignoir. Cockatoo. About this cockatoo upon a rock, there are two opinions on side of the critics of the poem. Some believe that the cockatoo is weaved on the rock, so it's a like a painting, an emotionless, inanimate object or picture. But some say that no, the cockatoo is present in there. She is her pet, and just notice the presence of the birds in this poem. The birds are are a symbol of freedom, and here in this poem, when we see the mental the process of the mental freedom of the woman from her previous system of belief, there are a number of birds available in the poem as well. She dreams a little, and she feels the dark and encroachment of that old catastrophe. She's enjoying the time, but she cannot forget what she has rejected to do. That she remembers that she has to be in the church. So she dreams a little of her complacencies, and she feels the dark and encroachment. Encroachment is like the enjoy and the intrusion of a thing into someone's territory. And here we have the intrusion of religion and the ideas about Jesus Christ into her complacent moment of that old catastrophe. The old catastrophe is Christ's crucifixion. And check out old catastrophe, ancient sacrifice. Ancient and old are both adjectives referring to this moment in history. So it's the bygones. Let's bygones be bygones. And you see, first he uses the word sacrifice, but the next term is catastrophe. As a calm darkens among water lights. So it's a calm which is darkened by these ideas, like when you're at the sea, at the seashore, and all of a sudden some dark clouds come to the sky. The pungent oranges and bright green wings seem things in some procession of the dead. Now two thoughts are commingling with one another, winding across white water without sound. Is that the religion? This is the realm of religion, a white water without sound. The day is like white water without sound, stilled for the passing of her dreaming feet over the seas to silent Palestine. Naturally, she's living in America, so in order to go to Palestine, she should pass over the silent seas, dominion of the blood and sepulchre. The blood and sepulchre refer to Jesus Christ, the Holy Sepulchre, the cave in Jerusalem, where Jesus was entombed at the Last Supper. Jesus referred to his blood as sealing the covenant, the promise between God and his people. So from there, and where she is in her home, her thoughts move to Palestine, the tombstone of Jesus Christ, and his blood and the redemption idea. Why should she give, and this is the second stanza starting with the question, why should she give her bounty, her generosity to the to the dead? What is divinity if it can come only in silent shadows and in dreams? These are major questions being asked in this poem, and this part of the poem, because after them he's going to suggest, the speaker is going to suggest something new, a new form of divinity. This is not divinity if it is sporadic, if it only comes in darkness and in forms of shadows. Shall she not find in comforts of the sun? So there are other alternatives to her from the earthly beauties, from what is available in pungent fruit and bright green wings, and we have the repetition of the images already given to us at the first stanza, or else in any balm or beauty of the earth, things to be cherished, like the thought of heaven. Divinity must live within herself. So this is one alternative. Divinity is in herself and in her emotions. And here in this part, in the color purple, you can see these alternatives, these earthly forms of divinity, passions of rain or moods in falling snow, grievings in loneliness, or unsubdued elations when the forest blooms, different natural scenery, gusty emotions, and wet roads and autumn nights. Now, more or less all of us had experienced these things, all pleasure and all pains, remembering the bough of summer and the winter branch. These are the measures destined for her soul. So this is the suggestion of the speaker of the poem, but yet we have not heard the voice of the woman. And he in this third stanza of the poem talks about different forms of the divine, the traditional divine, Jove, Zeus, or Jupiter. Jupiter meaning sky father, Roman god. His Greek counterpart Zeus was suckled by God in his childhood. Jove in the cloud has his inhuman birth. So inhuman is important. That when the god is inhuman, he cannot understand what does it mean to be a human. No mother suckled him, no sweet land gave large motions to his methy mind. He moved among us as a muttering king. muttering king he is, magnificent, would have moved among his hinds. And then Zeus had moved among his hinds, but those very hinds actually, the farmhands, rustics, allude to shepherd's Zion, or fabrication of the mind, who saw the star of Bethlehem, which signaled Jesus Christ. So those very hinds, those very people who believed in Zeus, changed their form of divine. It says that the story of the divinity comes from the mind of mankind. It's a fabrication of the mind of man. So at first, the form was Jove, Jehovah, Jehovah, Zeus, or Jupiter, and now they had found a new god. They had fabricated, fostered a new god, according to Williams in this poem, Stevens in this poem. His hinds until our blood come commingling virginal with heaven, commingling virginal with heaven, the story of Mary the Virgin, with heaven brought such requital to desire. The very hinds discerned in a star. So the star was discerned by the hinds, by the people themselves. So there is nothing sacred about it. We've done it. This is our story. Shall our blood fail, or shall it come to the blood of paradise? And shall the earth seem all of paradise that we shall know? And this is a major question here. And shall the earth seem all of the paradise that we shall know? And this is also the suggestion of the speaker of the poem. The sky will be much friendlier than now, a part of labor and a part of pain. The sky would not be the dwelling place, the residue of God anymore. The sky would be part of the earth. Therefore, if you look at it, a part of labor and a part of pain is a reference to the punishment of Adam and Eve when they were banished from the Garden of Eden. Um, Adam's punishment was to sweat to gain his blood, and Eve's punishment was the pain of labor, uh, of childbirth, and next in glory to enduring love. So it's we would show something else towards heavens, the skies. When we look at them, we would see the beauty in them, not the presence of a God, not this dividing and indifferent blue. Here is indifferent blue because the God is inhuman and indifferent. But if we look at it as part of the nature, as part of the earth, as part of the human life, then it would be much friendlier, or the relationship between God or divinity and man would be an earthly one, or they would have been better friends, we can say. And finally, in the fourth stanza, we have the voice of the woman. And whenever the woman speaks in this poem, her utterance is put within quotation marks. I'm content, she says, I'm content when vacant birds before the sky test the reality of misty fields. And you have seen birds in testing by moving their heads, by their sweet questionings. But when the birds are gone and the warm fields return no more, where then is paradise? The woman is in search of an imperishable form of beauty, as something which is always in there, like the idea of heaven as it is introduced in the holy books of Christianity, Islam, and let's say Judaism, where then is paradise. There is not any hint of prophecy. And then the woman asks her question, and there comes the answer on the side of the speaker of the poem. There's not any hint of prophecy, nor any old chimera of the grave. Forget about it. In Greek mythology, chimeras were such beings. Here, it's about a shadow, an unbelievable thing, a non-existent thing. So the speaker is telling her such a thing does not exist as paradise of the grave, neither the golden underground, and different forms of the other world, like the Hades, for example, nor isle melodious for spirits get them home, nor visionary south, nor cloudy palm remote on heaven's hill. So different versions of paradise suggested by different religions and different forms of mythology to people are introduced here, that has endured as April's grin endures, or will endure like her remembrance of awakened birds, or her desire for June and evening tipped by the consummation of the swallow's wings. Time passes, but this passage of time is beautiful. The idea here is that nothing changes in heaven, and in those heavens everything is fixed, but the beauty is in change here, and change happens not on paradise, which is promised, but on this very earth on which we are living. This is the idea here. And in the next stanza, she continues. She's still doubtful. She says, "But in contentment, I'm satisfied. But in contentment, I still feel the need of some imperishable bliss." And here comes a very determined, definite answer. Death is the mother of beauty. Unless you fear that you will lose something, you wouldn't love that. You wouldn't, take care of it. So death is the mother of beauty. You keep doing something because you know the time is passing. You love people because you know someday you will lose them. So this is the idea. Death is the mother of beauty. Loss is the mother of beauty. Hence from her alone shall come fulfillment to our dreams and our desires. Although she strews the leaves of sure arbitration on our path, of course there are some drawbacks, some overwhelming moments, but it does worth it. The path six sorrow took, the many paths where triumph rang as brassy praise, or live whisper a little out of tender or love, whisper a little out of tenderness. There are beauties and there are sorrows, but all of them together. She makes the willow shiver in the sun for maidens who were wont to sit and gaze upon the grass. Wont means accustomed, and she is death. She, in death of time, maybe is the mother of beauty of love. Because if it was not for the passage of time, if it was not for the seasonal cycles, the woman, the girls would not come out so that they can see the boys, and then some love appear between them. Upon the grass relinquished to their feet, she causes boys to pile new plums and pears on disregarded plate. The maidens taste and stay in passion of the littering leaves. Don't forget that pear and plum are some symbols of sexual relationships, and here he suggests them like that. And you may ask about the disregarded plate. The publisher of the poem also had the same question in mind, so he wrote a letter to both Stevens and asked about it. Stevens explained that I had an auntie who just gave us a silver plate or something, but it was useless, and we used it in that way. So he had also implemented something about his personal life in this part of the poem. Uh, so it was not for the autumn, the harvest, and these ripe fruits. No love would happen. The girls come out for their sake. They know that winter would come, and then the boys come also for their sake, and something happens between them. And then the speaker of the poem compares and contrasts the paradise, the promised paradise, and what is the earthly paradise. And the difference is that the promised paradise is, let's say, is a boring place because nothing is changing in there. While, in contrast, the earthly paradise, in which everything is dying and have its rebirth, have the rebirth, is more beautiful. So, is there no change of death in paradise? Does ripe fruit never fall? Or do the boughs hang always heavy in that perfect sky? Such a boring place. Unchanging? It's so like our perishing earth. And he says, maybe unfortunately, on the side of the gods, they have promised a paradise to us which has our earthly elements in it. So they have depicted paradise through the earth itself. So why, forgetting about this earth, which has everything they had promised in it, and then just wait for something we don't know whether it would come or not? With rivers like our own that seek for seas, they never find the same receding shores, that never touch with inarticulate pang, that things never end in paradise. So like that, there is a river, but the river never ends up on a sea, and the sea doesn't have waves. There is a sea, but no waves, no typhoons, for example, no turbulence. Why set pier upon those river banks, or spice the shores with odors of love? Why should we lend them to their paradise? We have them here, and we have to use them. Alas, they should wear our colors there, the silken weavings of our afternoons, the best colors of our life is taken in there, and pick the strings of our insipid lutes. They use our musical instruments, but their music is a boring one. Like there is no interest in it. Death, and he repeats this thematic idea of the poem. Death is the mother of beauty, mystical, within whose burning bosom we devise our earthly mothers waiting sleeplessly. Mothers love their children because they fear losing them. They if they don't care about their children, the children would die. So if it was not for the fear of losing, the mothers wouldn't take up their children, take care of their children. The children would die. So death is a double mother of beauty. And then comes the seventh stanza, which is a little bit masculine. It talks about an orgy and an orgy, which was a kind of ritual celebrated for Dionysus and other gods of fertility. Supple and turbulent, a ring of men. Supple means bending and moving is like dancing, and turbulent means full of movement, dynamic. A ring of men shall chant an origin as some morn their boisterous devotion to the sun. So we have the sun. Not the S-O-N sun, but the sun S-U-N one being praised here. We are back to paganism, the worshipping of nature, not as a god, but as a god might be, not as a god might be, a semi-god, a quasi-god, naked among them like a savage source. So he is just like other human beings, part of the cheerful humans. Their chant shall be a chant of paradise, out of their blood returning to the sky. And they are just making loud sounds, and in their chant shall ever voice by voice the windy lake wherein their low delights the trees like seraphim and echoing hills. Here he's suggesting that everything becomes earthly. Seraphims are the trees are turned into seraphims or the angels, and every aspect, every element in this nature is praising that God, the Son, that core among themselves, the unity of being, the core among themselves long afterward. So that the sound, the chant is being heard, everyone is chanting for God. They shall know well the heavenly fellowship of men that perish and of some mourn. So they know that everything is passing. They know about the perishable things on earth, the changing nature of life, and whence they came and whither they shall go, where they come from and where they're going to. The dew upon their feet shall manifest. There is no order or organization of time in the world. And after this stanza comes the last stanza of the poem, in which it seems that the woman has come into resolution. She hears upon the water without sound. We are back to the first image of the poem, the darkening image, a voice that cries, and this is the voice of the woman once again. The tomb in paradise, in Palestine, sorry, is not the port of spirits lingering. It is the grave of Jesus where he lay. And don't forget that the Easter is the occasion of Jesus Christ uh, rising to heaven, is the moment he goes to the heavens from his grave. And here we see that where he lay, that Jesus Christ has went nowhere, nowhere. He's dead forever, dead like a stone. We live in an old chaos of the sun, but this is the life we have. Nature is our religion. We live in an old chaos of the sun, or old dependency of day and night, or island solitude, unsponsored, free of that white water, escape so free from that white water, free from the dark idea of religion. And then we have different elements of nature here. Deer walk upon our mountains, and the quail, a kind of bird, vessels about us, their spontaneous cries, sweet berries ripen in the wilderness, and in the isolation of the sky, at evening, casual flocks of pigeons make ambiguous undulations as they sink downward to darkness, the unextended wings. This final part of the poem about the pigeons, and it's being the afternoon, it's being the evening, is suggesting, maybe is suggesting the idea of death, that it happens like the sunset, and then the birds go downward, and everything does end without any resurrection, without any afterworld or the afterlife suggested by the religions. So here my explanation of the poem ends. Thank you very much for listening to this point. I hope I can see you in my next videos.